Well, hello and welcome to Audionautic Deep Space Network, episode 92. This is the Independent Musician's Guide to Production and Promotion. This week, we're taking a look at the new Arpeggiator plugin from Bleass, and this is a complex beast that does far more than an average up and down arpeggiator. We'll also check out a holiday present incoming, or actually out already, from Cherry Audio, the, Synthesizer Expander Module. This thing looks and sounds awesome. I've actually got it in the project file with Bleass, so you can hear them in tandem. And then finally, we've got more dire news coming from Spotify, of course, with a new round of layoffs, the third in 2023. So we're going to talk about what this could mean for the company and especially how it might affect independent musicians. My name is Sunwarper, and we're a little bit different today. We're missing the my Audionautic co-pilot and the one who does all the social media promo beforehand. That's why we're slightly late getting on, and I still missed a few, so I might try and get some in while we're live, but that's okay. We're here. We got to be here now, but we're missing Curtis. He is off doing other things today, unfortunately, but he might pop in the chat. We'll see. But with me today is Eon Lake and Asaph Stripe. Asaph Stripe, how are you? I see you're filling in for the cat void that we've got.
Yeah, no, I've got this one under control, so I'm happy.
Not gonna hop and open the door. You kept the door open in prep for that.
Yeah, exactly.
How you doing?
Good, real good. Yeah, I'm actually been working with the Gaia back there. You can see it, the Gaia 2. So I'm enjoying that, and I removed a couple of old friends, bigger synths from the studio. Just wanted to start the year off fresh and kind of like we always do, and try to focus myself, and then maybe go to a little more of a hybrid setup. Maybe there's a new Asaph Stripe in the emerging.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's the way to do it.
Yeah.
Always evolving. Now that Gaia 2, that just came out recently, right?
Yeah. It
that's
came
the
out.
Roland, I think, right?
Yeah, replaced the really kind of a classic, the original guy that'd been around a long time and kind of was notorious for, being a really knobby interface and a good way to learn synthesis. And so that's great for me because I don't know. I feel like I'm definitely still learning synthesis. That's never ending.
I don't know if you ever stop learning.
No.
It's always learning something.
So.
Yeah.
And the only thing I'll say is really cool. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah, the last thing I was going to say on it is it comes with the SH101 installed as an extra synth, right? So you literally have the Gaia synth, and then you press a button, and you got an SH101, which I've never had. Basically, right now I'm in love with the 101, and I have a feeling that might last all through 2024.
Is that a polyphonic 101?
It can be, yes.
Oh, yeah, because is it the digital stuff they do? Because they made the 101, that little module of the 101 recently that has polyphony.
Yeah.
I've got my little MS 101 over here that I love. Yeah, they're awesome. I have to get to the comments really quick before we get to Eon Lake because we've got some good ones. First of all, Bendu's in there, hand waving a pink hand. Well, we appreciate that. How are you, Bendu? And Abby is in the chat. Unfortunately, they are muted in a team meeting, but we're always happy to have you. Probably they're doing the one headphone trick that Hydro Fighter coined. And Bendu is doing great. That's good to hear. Very good to hear. But here's the chat I wanted to get to because the hierarchy of power has changed in Audionautic right now. There's only one host with facial hair. Yeah, Eon Lake. Well, no, but I see some stubble there on Asaph. I see some stubble, so we're
three stages.
Yeah, we're in stages. Yeah, I actually shaved for like the first time in a week or two, like trimmed, and it was going nuts. I was like, oh man, I got to shave today. So yeah, I'm looking pristine for all of you. That's what we try to do here. Speaking of looking pristine in that Audionautic t-shirt, Eon Lake, how are you, my friend?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. I think you're right there. It is the sort of taking stock time of year, really, isn't it? Ready to do something maybe a bit different next year. I've been looking into synchronization, alternative synchronization methods, and whether or not I want to run a master clock that will run everything, including the computer and stuff like that.
Because what would you use, the computer, or would you use something else?
Digitat, maybe.
Oh yeah.
If you run yours slave to your computer, put it on the tempo and see how much you see it drifting. Mine drifts a fair bit when it's clocked from Ableton, from the computer. I also noticed, just using hardware on its own, that some devices are definitely better at clocking MIDI than others, more accurate. So, I'm doing a little bit of an investigation into it, a little bit of study. I'm going to try a couple of things. A lot of the time I'll record things and line up the wave files on the beat so that it's sample accurate. But if you are still running stuff live, it can really mess up drum sounds that are layered if the timing is out and it's not deliberate.
Oh, yeah.
I know we like to shoot things off grid, but I'm a believer that everything should be absolutely bang on, so that if you want to change it, it's,
otherwise those off-grid parts are going to become really off-grid.
And if you're layering kicks, and they're playing the same part, you need them to be accurate, otherwise it can change the transient sound really drastically. So
looks like Devoid of Funk is with you, actually. They say MC707 works as a master clock, mixer, synth, drum machine for me. That's interesting to use the hardware instead of the DAW.
The second
very
thing
interesting.
for me is going to be the 404 to see if that did a better job. But Digitakt to 404, SP404 were going to be the ones I tried first.
I've never used the 404 to be the brain, like MIDI wise. I've always either just used it as, it works perfect for all the audio incoming, but the MIDI, it was always the little TRS inputs on the 404. So I typically just work with but now I have the TRS to MIDI connections. Yeah.
The MPC Live wasn't very accurate. As soon as I switched it to the 404, everything locked up nicely.
Just says how great the 404 is, right? I don't have to say it this episode.
Yeah.
Pat in the chat says Ableton Link is your friend. Yeah,
but not all of my devices have it. In fact, only a few do. So, but true. Just something about using wireless as well that doesn't sit well with me.
You think I've never used Ableton Link. Is there latency?
I think there is.
Link?
Yes, but
I don't think so much. But it's a headache live.
I could see that. Pat also asks, I've not used Overbridge yet on my Digitakt, but Ian, like if the Digitakt is in Overbridge mode, is the clock still pretty good?
That's what I'm wondering, because one of the things that gets upset is the Digitakt, and I lose audio over it. If it gets if there's too much drift, the audio will drop, and you have to unplug and replug the interface. So something's not happy.
Interesting. All right. Well, that's good. I mean, I think you're right, Asaph and Ian. Like, this is the time to kind of like get ready for 2024, right? So to speak, figure out where you want setups to be, what you want to do with your gear, things like that. That's where I'm at right now. I mean, I've been using just the PO33 basically, and just being in the house because of the newborn. So at night, I'm just like sending GarageBand into the PO33, that 40-second sample time, and just making beats, doing it that way. And then I will later sample it into the Digitakt or the SP. Other thing I've been doing is just recording with the mic on Koala and then using that stretch function to time stretch it. And then I send that into the Digitakt and the SP when I have time. So it's an interesting way of doing these like portable ideas, like the ideation or whatever is in this portable mode. And then when I have time, I come into the DAW setup or onto Ableton Logic. Oh, you almost got me there. You almost got me. But I go into Logic and we'll work on it from there. So I'm curious, chat, anybody doing the same, figuring out a new setup, testing out different things in the new year, kind of getting ready, seeing how far you've come this year, anything like that? Let us know. Let us know what you've been up to. But gentlemen, shall we check out this Bleass Arpeggiator?
Yeah, interested in this.
All right. Yeah, so this is awesome. What did you say there, Ian? Like,
they haven't put a foot wrong yet with their other stuff, so yeah.
They still haven't. This thing, I was like, oh, cool, an arpeggiator. All right, great. When they and to add a caveat, because I know Ian Lake will get on me if I don't. Bleass sent this over to us to check out, but they don't have any say in the content or anything like that. They just, sent it over for us to look at, as they've done with some other things. And They make some really good plugins. You can check out our coverage of Megalit and some other ones in previous episodes of ADSN. But let me add Sunwarper to the. I have to add this little Sunwarper with no logo on the left, otherwise there won't be sound. But I've got Bleass Arpeggiator open. So yeah, when I first opened it, I was like, okay, an arpeggiator, that's great. This thing is a lot more than just an arpeggiator. So first of all, it has a synth built in, but you can also use it as an effect. Now, they sent this to us, I think, over on Saturday or Sunday, so I haven't had a lot of time with it. So we're going to do a quick walkthrough, show you kind of what it can do. There is a way to use this as an effect on other VSTs. I'm not sure if you can do it in Reason. They have tutorials for basically every other DAW, but when I tried to open it in Logic, it's probably something on my end, but it was really messing up Logic. Like, it wouldn't show up, first of all, after I scanned it in and it was saying it was scanned in, but it was causing Logic to do crazy things like the playhead wouldn't move even though the song was playing. As soon as I disabled it, it was working. Again, that's probably something on my end, but just be aware if you need to use it as an effect that I would watch the tutorials on their website on how to sync in Ableton, Reaper. They have basically every DAW you can imagine, except Reason. I didn't see that one there. But the synth is pretty bare bones. They say it themselves. It's really just an accessory if you just want to use it, but it's an FM synth, no filters. I'd love to see that added, but it's got a really nice delay, and you can do decay changes, the different types of FM and things like that. So if you want to just use it as a plugin on its own, it's right there. This is the FM synth that comes with it. So let me read a little bit first about what it can do. It's got a bunch of different tabs, but really what makes it stand out from every other arpeggiator and more, it keeps it in line with the way Bleass apps typically work, are its multiple forms of routing. So you can see on this performance page, you've got the mod wheel, which you can set destinations to destinations with the amounts you want. You've also got 2XY, so you can set those destinations as well. Then if you go to the arpeggiator, this is the main center of this plugin. You've got reset, trigger, pattern, which you can see looks like it's glitching out, right? All these things setting. That's because I have this synced to the motion sequence, which we'll get to in a moment. But the pattern is you can either have it run in a normal way using the sequence, or if you use the pattern, you can have all these different kinds of patterns that it plays. Like if you see on 29, it's got a couple and then a couple are muted, so it will do that. I have it set to 0, but then with the motion sequencing, when it's changing around, it will move it around, and I'll play it in a second. Sequence, you get a ton of options. You can do repeats, note repeats, step jump, octave range, octave offset, the different types of play modes. So if you wanted to do just a normal like up down or all these different kinds. Polyphony, you get the chords, or you can shut it off, and you can even route how much polyphony is going on at different parts of the sequence. You can also add bass notes. I have that routed so that bass notes pop in and then pop out. Gap, and then there's velocity. So you can make it sound more human by adding velocity. You can randomize it. You could even modulate all of these to get it even more human sounding. You get 2 LFOs, which you can route to multiple things, 2 destinations each. You get this motion sequencer, which we'll talk about in just a second. And then, like I said, we've got the synth. So let me just play just Bleass, because I've also got that Cherry Audio synth in here, but we'll get there. So this is what I've got. Harmonic Cloud was one of the presets it came with. I just altered it a bit with some of these motion sequencing. So you can hear how, let me move this. There we go. Sorry, it was not soloed there. Hear how these are changing the trigger rate. So it will do all different kinds of 16th notes, 8th notes, quarter notes, all that just by moving these around. And you can change it to all these different kinds. This is getting chaotic, but you can see that over here on the LFO. Let me get back to that. I've also got, so this bass note pops in. If I just shut that, see how you don't see the bass note anymore? That's in that polyphony section. So you can do 1 octave, 2 octaves. So it's moving around and doing that. It's also messing, that sequence that I was showing is messing with the pattern. So first it starts normal and then it gets all different. Let's just shut the motion off. That's what it's doing with no pattern and with none of that motion sequencing. If I move the pattern around, you can see here showing you what it's playing and then what it's muting. You also have chance, offset. There's a lot. So I don't know. Does it give you guys any ideas? Is this something, ASAP Stripe, that you would be interested in getting? I know you're getting into DAW work more, so I'm curious. Does something like this intrigue you?
Oh man, totally. This is amazing. I mean, because you can use this as kind of a lead, like the structure, or you can just kind of use this as a cool complementary piece. And it's got so much movement and life going to it. You know, it's just no, it's fabulous. It's like so far from our classic art. What you think of an arpeggiator? It's like no, it's great. I mean, and hey, it's got an FM synth already built in, so
yeah,
that's a
and you don't have to use the FM synth. Like I was saying, I was having some issues, but I'm not saying that's on Bliss's end. That's probably just with my logic or something. But you could use it with like what we're going to talk about, the Synthesizer Expander Module, and use it just as an arpeggio or arpeggiator on another synth. So it's got a lot of flexibility. I have to say the FM synth is really cool. I would love to see some additions like a filter, maybe some other things like that, because there's a lot you can do. It's really meant to be just this plucky synth, and there's a lot you can do within it despite its minimal setup and stuff. But I'd love to have a filter on it. You could always add a filter too with an effect or something like that.
Is this?
Oh,
is this
go ahead,
iOS?
ASAP.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Say again.
Is this iOS and?
Yes, that's the other thing. On iPad, you can move these with your fingers, and it almost looked like they had a sync between the app and like a plugin, but I'm not sure about that. I only have it so far on as a plugin, but really quick too, let me show just with the chord. If you look at this, when it starts, let me re-trigger it. Hold on. So here it's playing the chord, and you can't change this, but you could mess with the bass notes still. But when you tweak it around, you can change the polyphony. So there's a lot you can do. I mean, there's so much you could do, but even more important and crazy is how much you can route, because you have all these different methods of routing modulation, but all these different destinations you can change. So yeah, it's an arpeggiator, but it can do a lot. And kind of like what you were saying, ASAP Stripe, you can create leads out of it. There was one, let me find the patch. Where was it? Lo-fi keyboardist. I saved it. Let me play that. It's just like a nice gentle melody with, I'm just holding one chord this whole time, but it's doing all these octaves and stuff. So yeah, there's a lot here. Eon Lake, how are you feeling about this? I think you're muted, just heads up.
Yeah, I'm gonna mute.
Guess what I'm going to say though.
Go ahead, just say it. Sold? Yeah, I believe it is $40. By the way, I have to check, but I think it's $40.
They keep doing this, you know. It's an arpeggiator. You go, oh, right, really? And then you see it.
Yeah.
Think, ooh.
Yeah, arpeggiator is almost an undersell in the name. You know, like I mean, that is what it is. Yes, it is. But it's like once you start looking into it, it's like, wow, this can do so much. You know.
Yeah, and you know me,
I believe it's $40.
I love art.
Yeah,
I always have. And then I'm interested in doing things like, you know, sticking LFOs on arpeggiators as MIDI, you know, as MIDI tools in Ableton and so on, and just messing about with parameters and using arpeggiators to modulate arpeggiators to come up with more interesting sequences, longer sequences, and so on. And this is just made for that, obviously. You know, having motion sequencing as well as LFOs and all of that,
and the XY and all the routing you can do with the XY,
performance controls and so on. Yeah, I mean, you know, if that's what you like doing, this is going to do it for you. So yeah, I think I'll probably be giving that a go myself. Definitely.
Real quick, I am putting the link to the arpeggiator in the chat. I'll put it in the description and in the show notes if you're watching back on Apple Podcasts or Spotify later, but it's there in the chat right now. It is $40. It doesn't look like that will change. It doesn't seem like it's an introductory price or anything like that. again, I like when I first saw it, I was like, great, an arpeggiator, that's cool. But the more you dive into it, the more stuff you can do with it, and it gets really complex. And again, this is just a quick look because I only had a little time with it. If you want a full walkthrough or full in detail review or anything like that, let us know. We can do it when Curtis comes back. We can have kind of multiple people's takes on it and things like that. Just wanted to give a quick look, and also wanted to say thanks to Bleass for sending this over. Yeah. If you want to check out our reviews and walkthroughs of other Bleass products, you can check in the podcast. We've got the Megalith, which is crazy. So there's a lot that they offer in their plugins, and they all have this similar type of workflow and setup, tons of modulation. So if you're really into sound design and things like that, their dream come true with how you can do stuff like that. And especially when it comes to the synths. One song I just released, Monolith Memories, every synth was Megalith with all these different motion sequences and variations and stuff. It's a lot of fun. Definitely inspiring.
Yeah, I was gonna say that face is really cool too. Really, it doesn't. It's when I just looked, it doesn't intimidate me at all. You know, sometimes you look at it, the way they've sectioned things, my brain really likes it. You know.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of options. It looks like kind of complex, but it's really not. Once you break it down, everything's laid out in front of you, and the modulation is so easy. It just shows like, oh, set this destination, set this amount, and then you can tweak these things around. And LFO, set the destination, choose the waveform, do all that. It's like all laid out and simple. So yeah, it's definitely worth checking out if you're looking for just either an idea machine, or if you like using arpeggios like Eon Lake over here. It's definitely worth checking out. Anything else? And chat, if you have any questions, let us know. But anything else you want to talk about this before we move to the next plugin of the day?
I was just thinking about which Megalith patches will sound good with it on. But
every Megalith patch sounds really good, man. I forget the one that I used for the bass in that song. It was like that motion sequencer. Let me go back to
so the second sound you played was more like a car plus strong sort of, plucked sound.
Yeah, so let's see what the synth is here.
Sound.
So this is...
And it works really well on sounds that aren't traditionally sounds you'd expect ARPs with.
So here is the last song I played, the Lo-Fi Keyboardist. That's a preset from them. This is the synth design that was being used in the patch. So it's pretty simple. Again, I'd love to see a filter put on here. That would be great. But yeah, Megalith, their main synth, putting Megalith through this would be insane, because you'd have that motion sequencing both in Megalith and in this. You do some crazy stuff. Yeah,
maybe they're working on a separate filter.
Yeah, maybe that's true. Yeah,
motion filtering. And
I think they might already have a filter. I forget. They have a lot of plugins. They make some really good stuff, though. Bendu in the chat says, looks great for that. I need another part in the section quandary. Inspiration Factory. Exactly. Yeah. And it's like I said, the arpeggiator as a name is a little misleading because it can do a lot in comparison to just being an arpeggiator. But maybe that's what they're going for, so you're like, whoa, this can do a lot for an arpeggiator. But yeah. All right. Chat, if you have anything else about this or any questions, just put them in the chat. If you're watching this back, let us know in the comments. But let's move over to the Cherry Audio synth. This is the Synthesizer Expander Module, and it is free for the holidays from Cherry Audio. We've covered Cherry Audio synths before. They have some free ones. Bendu, actually, speaking of Bendu, is the one that I learned about Cherry Audio from with the free, I think it's the MG1, that Moog. That thing's still free. That thing is awesome. But this looks great. Let me read a little bit about what it is, and then let me just show you what it looks like right now, and then we'll play a little bit from it. So let me go to the Synthesizer Expander Module. Here it is. And so this was originally released in 1974, not the plugin, but the original synth it's modeled after. Keyboardless mono module was intended as a companion to the Oberheim DS2. Soon thereafter, Oberheim linked multiple synthesizer expander modules to an early digitally scanned keyboard to create some of the first polyphonic synthesizers used by artists like Toto, Steve Porcaro, Styx, and more. Though it was simple, bare bones monosynth, the synthesizer expander module possessed a unique tone quality, and you'll hear that in a second, courtesy of its 12 dB state variable filter. With low pass, band pass, high pass, and notch modes, this flexible filter was the star of the show. We've precisely recreated it here with a filter section and phaser with an O effect programmed by award-winning synth designer Mark Barton. And this thing is awesome. It looks like Bendu has already installed it, but not played with it yet. Try it. That's what I'll say. First of all, it's free. I mean, you can't go wrong, but try it. It is, it's awesome. Let me get Sunwarper back on so we can hear it. Let me play the sound that I made. This was a patch that I tweaked just slightly. It was the gliding fifths patch, and this is what it sounds like. Let's hear that filter. I love it. It's got that pluck when you go down in the filter, then as you bring it up, it's massive. Here's the resonance. Resonance is really nice. Let's add some of that phaser. So yeah, it's free. I mean, what's not to love about it? ASF Stripe, I think you had some of the historical context of the synth, if you'd care to add some of it.
Yeah, I mean, if you look in the 70s, you know, there was good Lord, I'm going to get it wrong, Moog, Arp, and Oberheim. Generally speaking, right? You got the big Moog sound, the 24 dB, the Arp, another one like that, even though it could get kind of nasty. And then you had the SEM, and you can kind of feel that little fizz quality that just gives you goosebump and that beautiful resonance. And it's a different filter, and it's a different synth. And it's, you know, I remember when I first heard it, and this, you know, classic YouTube demo, and I just went, oh my God, what is that? That is so beautifully musical. And I remember, so one of my, you know, they were making the big box ones for a while, but they were kind of big and clunky. You know, I saw them in person. I kind of went like, yeah, I like it, but it's kind of, I like it as a VST a little better. Even though I will say one last thing, the two voice is like one of my dream instruments to have in, if I had a, you know, a nice collection, could afford it. And so, yeah, no, it's a classic in the fact that I think we were talking about it, the young producers can have that in their, you know, toolkit now for free. Because that sounds really good, you know, let's just be honest. That's not, I don't know, you know, maybe you get a real one. I'm just know that sounded like a SEM to me.
Yeah. I wasn't familiar with this synth, but I was just like, I mean, free, great, yeah, I'm gonna go for it. And it's so much fun to play. I can play chat and Asaph and Eon. Like, if you want me to play a couple more patches, I'm happy to. But Eon, like, what do you think about this?
Well, I mean, if you don't know it, you recognize the classic sound when you hear it, don't you? I mean, ASF Stripe nailed it in the sense that there's something subtle about it, about its tonality and about the filter characteristics that just, apart from sounding good, are really musical. There's something really musical about it. I don't know if it's saturation and partials and things that you get because of that. Who knows? I don't know, but it just sounds damn good. It really does. Definitely.
Did you grab this already?
No, I've been trying not to look, you know, all the sales and everything, you know.
But it's free.
It's a terrible time of year for me for having money to spend. I just got nothing at this time of year every year, and yeah, it's helpful if people like you will just pick out the free stuff that I can go and get.
That's what we try to do here on the show. You know, we love free stuff. We did Black Friday deals. Now we've got whatever's coming for Christmas. Yeah.
So if you're like me and you can't afford to be looking at opening some of these emails you're getting sent, you know. Yeah, we got the free stuff for you.
I was wowed by the sound of it. Like, not because it's free or anything, just like, I mean, Cherry Audio always makes incredible synths. Octave Cat was amazing, but I had that little bass line melody, whatever you want to call it. And I was like, oh, let me just throw it on top and see what. And then I put that gliding fifths on and was like, whoa, started playing with the filter and was just lost for like an hour just moving a filter. I was like, what am I doing with my life? But it sounded good and I enjoyed it. I had fun. So you know what? It's okay.
Yeah. It just means
you guys want to hear a couple more?
Yeah,
oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead,
I was going to say, it just means you have really good taste. So,
yeah. Well, thank you. I'll take that as a compliment. Getting lost for an hour in a filter is a good taste sign. Okay, cool.
Yeah, we've all done it.
Yeah, don't lie. Chat. Say it if you've done it. No. Yeah, I'm guilty of that often. Let's just play a couple more patches that they've got. Here we go. So this is synth punk. Oh. I like that. All right, let's see what else we've got. Hard lead. Oh. All right, let's see what else. Hard to sync. That's an interesting name. Oh, wow.
It really sounds like an Oberheim.
Let's get that phaser on. Oh, that resonance. Listen to that resonance.
Yeah. I mean, it covers all these ranges from something that could be a really thick bass, quite a strong lead, to sort of in between these stringy sounds that you could ambient up and fill in the middle range with, and then just odd sort of sonic textures you could add for just interest. I mean, it's kind of as little or as much as you want, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it's got some kind of harmonic distortions. I keep calling it kind of fizzy, but it's not a Roland filter. You know, it's not a Moog filter. But it's like you just can feel it fit in perfectly. You're like, that I don't have that for sure, you know.
Yeah.
And that's cool. That's a winner, you know.
It has a unique sound to it for sure. I think like they were saying in the description, it all comes to that filter, but also just the sounds in it and the resonant, like everything, it all adds up. Also that echo it's very simple, but it's a lot of fun. And then the phaser sounds really good too. So yeah, I mean, what's not to love? Yeah, it's unique. And what's not to love for the price of free, right? I mean, you know, and let me really quick, Eon Lake, just talk amongst yourselves for a moment while I add the link to this so everybody can get it.
Yeah, so I'm already thinking I could dial up a nice thick bass sound, get an SSL bus compressor on it.
Oh, yeah.
And that's going to get pretty fat. They'll be doing some experiments with that this week. Definitely. I'm also, you know, there's the sick side of me is thinking, well, what happens if you put if you get the Bleass Arpeggiator?
I know, that's what I wanted to have set up. I tried to set it up and I couldn't get it to work in Reason, and I was like, oh, this would have been perfect. So if I'm able to get it in Logic, I'll do it next week or the week after or something. But I don't know what was going on.
With mad there. That sounds really,
dude. Yeah, putting all those routings on different things, that would be sick. And really quick, Bendu says stacks of SEMs were the sound of polyphonic synthesizers at a certain time.
Yeah,
very interesting. Absolutely. Yeah, I bet that sounded really good.
Yeah, I mean,
and I put the link in the chat.
Sounded like very, very much like early 80s synth pop. Really.
Yeah. But when but that with some grit or something, it doesn't feel.
There's definitely some color to it. I know what you mean, like a sample rate thing or some. I don't know. There's some sort of like grit that comes into it. And again, we're playing this, so I'm playing all the sounds through my laptop. And then, like, I'm listening to it and moving it based on what I'm hearing through Streamlab, our streaming app. So there's obviously some internet loss of audio quality and stuff, but I mean, I think I'm hearing it through the internet and it still sounds really good. So if you download it, you'll hear.
all this stuff that sounded really good years ago sounds even better now because we've got better ways of recording it and capturing it. And
it's pretty simple to use too. That's another good point. It's not real. It's pretty much dialed in, so you just tweak and just have a blast with it. And
I think it'd be fun for designing your own sounds too, because it's simple enough that you don't have to spend a long time tweaking stuff. We've kind of got one end with all the different routing and destinations and the Bleass, and then this one is like what you see is basically what you get. 2 oscillators, this and that. So it'd be cool to just use it. It's very simple to design stuff once you wrap your head around like its workflow and stuff, which shouldn't take long, but it seems like you can get a lot of flexibility out of what's so simple. And then there's a lot of different ways you can use the filter and things like that. And then if you modulate or automate all that stuff in your DAW, you could get some pretty crazy stuff. Like those filter rides I was doing changes the sound so drastically, but so melodically. It's very cool.
Got a knob function, hasn't it? Except it's a plugin, so you can automate all of those knobs.
Yeah.
Crazy possibilities when you think about it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, so that's the Synthesizer Expander Module. I've got the link in the chat. Again, I'll post it up on the video. If you're watching this back on Apple, Spotify, any podcast place, or on YouTube later, it will be in the show notes or on YouTube, the description. But this show is brought to you by our patrons, and if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be able to do this week in and week out, and we are very grateful to all of them. If you want to check out Patreon, it starts at as little as $2, and you get to join our Discord amongst a bunch of other features. At Audionaut Plus, you can come on the show, which, by the way, Audionauts, if you want to join for the round robin about Spotify, if you have something you want to say about Spotify, just hop in. The link is over in the Patreon, and we'd love to hear what you have to say about it. We also have the Audionaut Producer. You get sample packs and a bunch of other stuff, and then Audionaut Engineer. There's a lot of perks that come with it, but most importantly, we just love hanging out with all of you. We have additional podcasts, additional hangouts. So if you want to talk all this type of gear stuff with people who understand and can relate, this is a great place to do it. The Discord is also free for all to join. The link is in the description, but we have a patron channel where we talk all the stuff that's going to be in each episode. We get more in detail. We help answer questions. It's a lot of fun. So we appreciate if you check it out. And of course, just hanging out here is more than enough. But the link to Patreon is in the description, patreon.com/audionautic. Well, gentlemen, shall we get into the more dire news of Spotify?
Yes, that's enough fun.
Yeah.
I know. I wanted to sugarcoat and I wanted to put all the fun stuff at the start. Maybe I should have sandwiched Spotify in the middle, but with the round robin and stuff. So we have kind of 2 segments of Spotify, which I know we've been talking about Spotify a lot, but this is very important because as of now, we'll see if that changes, but they are the dominant streaming platform. So I think it's important as independent musicians to know what's going on with it and just where things are happening. And Lars is ready. He says, "Here we go, guys. Here comes the spice." Yeah, this news doesn't so much necessarily negatively impact independent musicians and us in general, but it could have long-term ramifications. But basically, we've been talking for a while now that there were first leaks and rumors of Spotify changing their royalty payout to blatant theft, basically, where they're going to take any stream that's under 1,000 in a year and give that to other artists, or so they say. That's the plan, to increase the royalty payouts, but not to everyone. They're making this tiered system where you have to reach a certain threshold and all this stuff. If you want all the details, we've got it in the last episode when they officially announced it. But they also just announced that they're going to be laying off 17% of its workforce. So they've done 3 rounds of layoffs in this year alone, totaling around 1,500 jobs altogether. And Daniel Ek, the CEO, I think Survey Channel's favorite person in the world, attributes the move to the need for financial restructuring, citing overhiring in 2020 and 2021. They have approximately 9,000 employees across the world, and I'm not sure if that's before or after these layoffs. So the company previously cut 6%, 600 employees in January, and then an additional 2%, 200 in June, all of this year. But Spotify posted a $34 million in operating income in this third quarter of 2023, which was its first quarterly profit since 2021. I think that's very key to note. And a lot of that came from this, a lot of this quote profit of this quarter came from lower personnel costs from the previous job cuts.
Yeah.
Now, interesting to note here is that Spotify has been raising subscription plans, and they've been diversifying their platform by adding audiobooks recently and podcasts. And I want to mention that because one thing with podcasts is it's a lot cheaper. They don't have to pay royalties. That's why they're making that big push, partly. But they've been doing a ton of investments into podcasts. They bought the Joe Rogan podcast for I don't know how many millions a couple years ago. And yet the podcast division faced some of the downsizing in those previous layoffs. So it's obviously either not working or they felt like they did all the setup and they can ease back on how many employees are in there. And yet in all this time with all the adding podcasts and all this stuff, they've been facing substantial investments, but not turning. They've been receiving substantial investments, but not receiving a profit or not turning a profit. Now, I do want to highlight, just so we all know what they're doing. Employees are receiving support for when they're laid off: 5 months of severance pay, healthcare coverage, vacation pay, immigration support, and 2 months career search assistance. So at least they're doing something that, that's good. And then the last thing to highlight, and I thought this was kind of sad, but I guess this is how it works. As of 8:30 a.m. on Monday, Spotify shares were up 5% in pre-market trading. So I don't know, I didn't check the confirmed prices now, but I guess investors were feeling good and seeing layoffs. But I would think that's slightly a red flag if I was an investor, but I don't know. I'm curious to hear everybody's takes on this. So I want to hear what you guys think just in general about these layoffs and things like that. But my biggest point is, last episode we were talking, because I was saying, none of us are happy about these royalty payments, but I was feeling, and I mentioned that it seems like this new royalty payment is alienating future producers, because up and coming producers and independent musicians, things like that, may think, why should I place my music on Spotify if they're not even going to pay me, right? And so it's an alienating royalty payment system that they're adding. And if these artists, which future artists, some of them, just by the way things work, will become big, popular, famous, and things like that, they may, when they're big, be like, why should I put my music on the platform? Remember, Taylor Swift had an issue, I think it was Taylor Swift, where she wasn't putting songs on Apple or Spotify or something, and all that changed real quick. So it's an interesting thought. And I was saying, this does not seem like a long-term way to fix the royalty payouts. And Curtis, who's not here, mentioned that maybe they don't have that long-term time. And now we hear about these layoffs. So that's one thing I wanted to ask you guys. Do you think all of this has been a Band-Aid and they're not really worried about the long-term ramifications? They're just kind of going for it. Ian, I know you're such a lover of Spotify. Why don't we start with you?
Well, I think what we're seeing is two sides of the same coin, really, aren't we? They're clearly trying to make some money, and as a business, I suppose they're obliged to their shareholders to do exactly that. And like you say, they haven't done a huge deal of it in the past. Sooner or later, as one of the few companies that's a streaming platform and nothing else, unlike Apple, unlike Amazon, they've got no other diversified interests to support them. They're a little bit more at the mercy of the market and so on.
Yeah.
I may be no huge fan of Spotify. I don't even like the name. It's probably the best way to put it. I don't like to hear about people losing their jobs. I don't like to hear about people losing their jobs through, we overhired. These are people's lives. I appreciate the fact that there's a decent redundancy package, and I wasn't aware of that, and it's nice to hear it.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to mention it. I saw that, was like, well, that is a good
that mitigates it.
Package, but
I suppose it's for the people who are losing the jobs to really, say how they feel about it. But I suppose the cold hard truth on the investor side is that the bottom line's the balance sheets, and they're making inroads to reduce their outgoings and increase what's coming in, and with a little bit of reorganization as well. And if they upset, I mean, personally, this is just my opinion, right? But if they upset people like you and I, so that we stop bunging up their servers with music that doesn't get streamed as much as, you know, major label investments, then all the better. You're still reducing costs. So
yes, but to play devil's advocate, what I'm saying though is that some emerging artists will become large, maybe get chosen by major labels and
yeah,
things like
I
that.
don't
And,
think
and the
they'll
only
happen
thing
a
I'm
lot.
pointing out is it
Will
might
be some.
alienate their. It'd be like, well, why should I be on Spotify? They didn't want to. They screwed me for years or whatever. That's
Yeah,
the only thing I'm saying. Yes, you're right.
it could
Smaller
happen.
artists, even mid-tier artists, are probably a nuisance to Spotify in their opinion. They're taking up data, but the whole thing was what's funny is that their whole setup pushed artists to do this whole monthly release thing. The way streaming, the way editorials worked, they were the ones that pushed for this whole new dynamic or release dynamic of let's do monthly releases because then you're more in the eyes of the Spotify
Gotta
editorial,
keep
you're
releasing,
getting on
gotta stay
playlists and stuff, and then
relevant.
now it's created this problem that the way they fix it is by just being like, no, it's just you're all screwed. So it's like it's a problem of their own creation and they're not fixing it, they're just kind of like
Yeah,
bucking
and some of
yeah.
this is speculation on my part. I mean, it's just hyperbole, but I do imagine that they're trying to make money. They've got to have significant costs for storage and whatnot. Yeah, people are always one of your biggest overheads in any business. So you can see what they're doing, right? They're just trying to reposition and make some money.
Yeah. ASF Stripe, what is your take on all this?
Well, it's quite similar to Eon Lake certainly on the business side. I think this is they're in trouble. They're in trouble. That's what all this news tells me financially, and they can give any reason why it's happening, but it smacks of losing market share. If you look at those, when you start saying your competitors are Amazon, Apple, YouTube Music, Google, to Eon Lake's point, who are way more diversified. That's a problem for them, right? They can, Spotify just hasn't made money, right? So this has been a big gamble that somebody is looking at it now going, whoa, I got to believe it. Again, another non-expert is looking at this market share and is looking at what's going on and said, you need to do something big. Because dropping 15%, roughly, it sounds like, of your workforce.
Yeah, let me give you the 17%, even
Yeah,
slightly
okay.
larger than 15.
Right. So that's not small, right? Assuming people were working, right? I will say, it does sound like they don't want to, that this is painful for them. But it is painful when you have that many people leaving. That's not that's people all around you packing up.
Yeah.
And so I think they're in trouble. I don't really care because I don't really like them much, to be honest. But that doesn't mean I don't believe in streaming. But they're not any sort of leaders for artists. So, and it feels like you get, so what? Good, because you weren't ever going to do anything grandiose for us. You've never really given us. You just over and over the years telling us to churn more, but then saying if you don't hit this metric, we're going to do this. To defining what an emerging artist is, them getting to make that definition to being on Wall Street, right? It just the whole thing is none of that is artistic. None of that is at all. It's so far from music and art that it's weird to talk about it, isn't it? So I would say don't put all your eggs in Spotify. I don't personally, it's not a service that I find of much value. I was trying to scam prices a little bit. They're it, I guess it has value, for people. given what it is. They're not exceptionally. It's not an exceptional deal given everything else. I mean, there's alternatives. So I think they are gonna. I think we're seeing kind of their future. So I don't. So, yeah, it's probably a good thing. Like maybe that's what I'm saying, but not for the employees, obviously.
Yeah, no, of course
nobody,
not.
don't even. Yeah, So, I don't think they're gonna be hiring soon. This sounds like somebody's getting some heat now. Like SoundCloud, right? Weren't they? They're another one that just, I don't know if they've ever made money.
SoundCloud, yeah, had a lot of issues monetarily and all that. I mean, they're still around. I think they always charged on the artist front, like, oh, do you want extra songs you can place and do this? Buy the premium version and this and that, and yeah.
I mean, I guess the last point would be it's not inconceivable that in 5 to 10 years they're not that big a deal anymore in the business side of things. And we've seen it before.
Bigger giants have fallen.
AOL, I always go.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. AOL, yeah.
But, case in point.
It's interesting because they hold, I believe still, they're the biggest streaming globally. They're the biggest streaming. I think Apple Music in the US is bigger. The last time I saw, it's just very interesting. But the one thing, it's kind of like one thing that's interesting with Spotify and consumers of it and stuff. Yes, there's other options. Yes, you could do Amazon, you could do Tidal, you could do this, but it's almost, I don't know if inertia is the right word, but it's like the thought of if you've been using Spotify for 10 years and have all these playlists, all these things you've saved and all this, you'd have to redo that, right? And it's like that's
the risk.
I wouldn't be surprised if that is something that keeps a lot of people using it. Now, that doesn't seem to help in the fact that they're not making money from that. Like, even though they've raised subscription service prices and things like that, it doesn't seem to be, I mean, this quarter they turned a profit, but they seem to attribute that to the lowering of employees and things like that. But
of your workforce.
Yeah, it's interesting because Spotify has always been not at the whims, but beholden to angel investment or investment. And it shows here because they're making all these changes, like Asaph is saying, probably because investors are starting to worry, like, that whole angel investment period is wearing off. And it's like, well, what are we doing for long-term profitability, I guess? A couple of bits of chat. Oh, I hit the first, it just kept going. Thanks, Eon Lake, for throwing me off there, Eon. I shared the wrong one first. Bendu says investors are the customers that matter to Spotify. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense logically if they're set up to be dependent on investment to turn profit, that they have to answer to investors. It's just it's very interesting, this whole thing. And
what oh, go ahead. I was
go ahead, Asaph. Sorry.
One last point. What if they're going to get bought? What if this is a setup to be
Song traders coming for them?
Well, no, they've got the catalogs, right? Why not Amazon or Apple or buy them at some point? Are they that could be what happens too. So I'll shut them out.
No, that's a really good point. It's very possible, or they could be trying to set up in that way. That's a good point. But you really pissed Lars off. Don't say that, Asaph. Don't give them any idea. We don't need corporations coming to like homogenizing and becoming one giant mega global corporation or something.
I know. I didn't give a lot of good options.
No, it's highly likely though. I mean, look at all these things we're seeing with SongTrader buying Bandcamp. Epic originally bought Bandcamp, sold it, and this and that.
I don't know.
But she's getting mentioned. She lives rent free in our heads, I guess. Apparently, she's gotten mentioned like so much. Curtis and Eon Lake were just going insane with Taylor Swift references last episode. I'm sure it'll begin again. Were Curtis here, he'd be going for it. Lars says they lied to us. Shocking. Bendu also says, who is discovered by a wider audience on Spotify? The general public can get their Weekend and Taylor Swift tracks anywhere. That's an interesting point. And yet people go to Spotify. Is it the playlisting? Is it the curation of playlists? Is it the user interface? Is it all of these things together? Is it they were one of the first? And like I was saying, the inertial idea of I have to transition to a different subscription service and move. I think Tidal, though, this was interesting because I'll get to this in a moment, but I think Tidal has this thing where you can put a playlist from another subscription or streaming platform, and they'll remake it for you. Just throwing that out if anyone's looking to move streaming subscription services, that other ones might have options like that as well. Bendu says SoundCloud can at least say small artists built a following on their platform. That was a continuation, I think, of the previous, like,
exactly.
gained a wider audience.
Context, and I think he's probably right a bit there. I mean, I don't know about Spotify particularly. It increases the clout for people when they do get discovered, but are these the channels where people discover something new? I don't think so. I think it's more about churn. This is where you go to listen to stuff you already like.
Well, here's the thing: playlists have gotten artists tons. Playlists have gotten artists multiple monthly, like tons of monthly listeners, right? But how often does that convert to followers and or active listeners? Like, if you go on Spotify for artists right now, you can see your active listeners versus listeners who listen to you just on a playlist, right? And it's typically not that high. It's a very stark contrast with the inactive listeners being very high if you're in a lot of playlists. So yes, there is discoverability in terms of my monthly listeners went from 1,000 to 200,000 from being on this editorial playlist or being on this big ambient playlist or this and that. And yet, did it convert to anything meaningful besides like $50 in a month or something, right? You know, like that's the issue. And I've seen bigger artists who get tons of monthly listeners, not big, but like, you know, mid-tier artists or whatever with a low following number, right? So,
yeah, I think people are learning about new music on other platforms or radio or through music, media publications or whatever, wherever they get their wherever they've got their finger on the pulse. But I don't believe that is Spotify. Yeah. You know, maybe they hear about, well, if you like this, you might like this. But I think it's more like once you have discovered something new, it's where you can go to listen to them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. It's a good point. Lars says they got too big and they didn't really have a solid core to begin with. Yeah, I mean, it seems like it was what's the term? House of Cards or castle built on sand or built of sand, or you know, like they just kept going and going with this like just very flimsy ground, and then we've got investors, we'll turn a profit later, like it'll work out. But I mean, I guess it hasn't yet. And also at some point you will reach like peak subscription. You can't keep adding subscriptions, right? That's one thing with subscription models that are an issue, like Netflix and stuff. At some point, the people that want it, everybody will have it, or you would think. And yeah, you might get new people and things like that. But there's a number that is like a limit or something, or can be. So yeah, it's an interesting thought. Got a couple bits about playlists from a few patrons. Lars says it's all about playlists. Nobody cares about your album on Spotify. Yeah, that's true. And I think, like I was saying, they built this whole streaming thing of monthly releases so you can get on playlists consistently and get on, you know, everybody's release radar and this and that. And now that's a problem because they have too many songs or whatever on their storage and things. So yeah. Bendu says anyone listening to an ambient or lo-fi playlist on Spotify does not want to know anything about the artist. Yeah, it's inactive background music. That's what it is, right? You're an inactive listener because you want somebody else's curation and you just have music playing. And sometimes, like, when I'm listening to a playlist, if I really dig a song, I am going to check that artist out. But
yeah, I don't think we're typical, though.
That's true. That's I'm quite true. Yeah, I'm not saying that everyone's like that. I'm just saying if a song speaks to you, most likely you might be like, well, at least I'm going to favorite that song and return to it or something, right? You know? Yeah. Let's see what else we've got. Lars says facts, Bendu. Yeah, Bendu's right. Yeah, and to Eon Lake's point and Asaph Stripe's points earlier, Lars says Apple and Amazon have huge other revenue streams to fall back on. Spotify has Joe Rogan. Yeah.
He'll catch you.
Yeah. Do that again there, Eon Lake. Stage fright. Oh, here it's something interesting from Devoid of Funk. I do the reverse. I listen to Sirius XM and Pandora, then go searching on Spotify. Yeah, so that's what Eon Lake is saying too. You're right. Yeah, I'm the opposite. I'm listening on Spotify and then like Release Radar, things like that, and then find new artists that way, or Bandcamp, quite honestly. But yeah, that Pandora, it's interesting to see. I feel like Pandora kind of like dropped in what not notoriety, but in usage or whatever. But it seems like it's kind of coming back. I remember when I was in college or something.
Yeah.
What was that, ASAP Stripe?
Yeah, I almost brought them up, but then I felt like
yeah, Pandora's still around. They added a subscription tier at some point, for like a streaming tier at some point, but I think they still do their whole radio thing. I really need to look in. I've seen some small artists making huge numbers on Pandora, and I really want to look into, because it used to be kind of weird to submit to Pandora for their radio, not the streaming. The streaming is through a distributor, but I need to look into that, and maybe if you guys are interested in us talking about like how to get onto the Pandora radio and things like that, let us know in the chat or in the comments after, or on Spotify. But that's something I've been meaning to look into, so that would give me the impetus to look into it and report back to you.
Podcasts now.
Yeah. But Lars says Pandora allegedly pays worse than Spotify. Well, but they probably don't have a streaming threshold.
Yeah, we want the radio. Yeah,
when they pay.
Yeah. Yeah, but the way Pandora used to work was, I think some of the streaming would go through your Pro or Sound Exchange or something. So there's some really weird ways that the royalty payments work on different aspects of it and things like that. Maybe that's all changed. It's been a while since I was trying to like get on Pandora and things like that. But yeah, very interesting.
Going back to the listeners and passive listener conversion and things like that, I think we need to remember that there isn't one type of listener, right? You've got very passive listeners who only have a casual interest or just want some background sound and are not really paying any attention, all the way to people who are rabid about grindcore or whatever, particular scene that they're plugged into, that they're probably hearing about somewhere else, but they use the streaming platform because, you get to listen to anything on it, and finding things elsewhere. And I really think that what we're looking for is engaged listeners, right? People who have an interest in music, who are trying to find things, not, large numbers of people who aren't particularly interested. I do think that the value is limited because of that fact.
Yeah, definitely. Lastly, I do want to read some words that Curtis wrote. He wrote just a little bit, but he did want to have a say in the Spotify bit. He says, I'd agree with this in terms of, the long-term sustainability. Like, it was this whole royalty shift for just because there's only short-term survivability, basically. He says, I'd agree with this. Very much a short-term goal for them to try and scrabble some money, plugging the leaking holes with newspaper. I like that. Plugging the leaking
it with cash, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, maybe they're like, just put some dollars on it. $100 bills work better than singles. We'll take it from those smaller artists. It's okay. Yeah, that's probably their thinking. But yeah. Do you have anything you want to add, Eon Lake, before we call it a day? No,
that's enough Spotify, I think.
Yeah.
ASAP Stripe, anything final you want to add?
I was just wondering if somebody could burn all these old catalogs of music, because I think that's what's killing us. That's a terrible thought, but they've got all these artists that they own, they bought, and everybody's just trying to churn this stuff, it seems like, and they're not real interested.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my glowing last thought, other than I love that SEM module.
Yeah, let's go back to the happy stuff, right? Yeah, the SEM is great. I love that you brought that back. Real quick, before we get to the final bit of the episode, Devoid of Funk says, I actively try to find things passively. I don't want to I don't want to hear what I think I want to hear all the time.
Yeah,
that's brilliant. Yeah, that's great. It's good. And that's like I listen to all kinds of genres. I did check my Spotify Wrapped out of curiosity, and I think it said I listened to 47 or 66 genres this year, and like the top listener there, the top 5 was like the weirdest combination of art. I was like, what is this? I listen to some weird different genres, man, but it's good to do that, and it's good to get out of what you normally listen to so that you can get influence outside of it. Like, listen to jazz, listen to this and that, just like experience other things to hear what's out there, and then you won't always go for the same stuff in your own music. That's what I like to do. Like
nutrition.
Yeah, the good way to put it. Speaking of food, Lars says breadsticks and sticky tack holding Spotify together. Yeah. Don't forget the couple $100 bills wrapped around the breadsticks. It seems like it works better that way for them. Yeah. ASAP Stripe, what have you got going on this week? Anything musically?
Oh my gosh, you got me off guard.
I like to do that. What can I say?
No, just hopefully. Well, I kind of redid the studio, so you know how that goes. Kind of, I wanted to open up some space. It's just so. And I do have, I do want to go a little bit more in the box, but I also am getting really fascinated with miking and doing some cool,
like reamp, like doing reamp, like putting the
just doing more sound, miking techniques, and just kind of adding some textures. I'm really interested in maybe picking up a ribbon mic, and they're pretty affordable now. I guess they're not really hard to make, technically speaking. So I've got some kind of, weird, kind of wild ideas, of adding a different element, I guess, to the music.
Yeah, I remember I used to reamp my speakers. Like I'd take a mic and reamp the speaker and solo an individual like guitar, or because I use in the box guitars, with amp simulation and stuff. It adds this air to it. And like I was saying, what I've been doing lately, just because of time constraints, I'm using just the phone mic in Koala and then adding like Bit Cooker, that one effect I really loved when we demoed Koala. And like I didn't even tune the acoustic guitar. I played a guitar out of tune, out of time. Like I didn't have a BPM playing. I just synced it with Time Stretch and Koala. And then I just used only samples from that to make the full song. So the bass, I took the first note, the E, the tonic, and used that as the bass. I dropped it a few octaves, and now it was a bass. And it just like, it actually turned out really cool. I'm not saying it would always sound good, and I'm sure it's very lo-fi, but that's what I was going for, and it was cool. So yeah, getting out of those comfort zones and trying it. But are you trying reamping like your speakers with like send a synth through, solo your synth and reamp it? Because that will give you air. Like in such a cool way. That's what everybody
keeps telling me. Yeah,
I can't recommend it enough, man. Yeah. Even drums, like it just like I wouldn't use those drums as the main. Yes. I would use that like in the background, almost side chain to the main drum, just to give that like room reverb, basically, like of old recordings or something. Eon, like, what are you up to this week?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm done. That was perfect. That's
okay. All right. Yeah, I'm like, sorry to throw you off there.
It saves putting your reverb return through a saturation effect as well.
No, you still put it through reverb and saturation. Don't forget a tiny reverb before the big reverb with like infinite decay. That's the way to do it, right, Eon Lake? The Eon Lake special.
Yeah. So that was something I want to experiment with this week is I've forgotten what it's called. Zero input something. It's a noise generation technique where you can use, say, like an old mixer, and you take the send and plug it into an input, and you basically overload it and create feedback loops, and then tune them with all the controls on the mixer. You can get some surprising sounds out of it. Have a look on YouTube.
I expect a demo from you on the next ADSN.
Well, I don't know how musical it's going to be. That's the thing. But I'm thinking maybe I can run it through a tuner plugin, hit a certain pitch,
like a pitch shifter or something. Yeah,
because you can also stack them and get. You're actually getting analog cross modulation through these feedback loops and stuff. And it's also a way of generating stuff with effects pedals as well, like distortion and delay pedals. Obviously, you just loop them around to themselves and use the noise floor to start generating a feedback loop. So that was something I wanted to have a little play with this week to get some different textures alongside the usual trying to finish some songs that are almost done. Playing and working, you've got a balance to do.
Of course.
What about you,
of course. Yeah, so like I said, I've been working with the PO33 a lot. I made a video talking kind of about why I still love the PO33 compared to that new EP133. And that was a lot of fun to make. It's interesting because like I really like the EP133. It looks awesome, but it loses some serious magic from the PO33. It's only 16-bit sample rate, so it loses that like gritty sound, which I know isn't everyone's flavor, but I love the character that PO33 adds. It's bigger, which isn't necessarily bad, but I'm kind of like, the reason I like the PO33 is it fits in my pocket. And then the sequencer is completely different. On the PO33, you click a sound and you get a step sequencer. On this, you have to go step by step, be like, okay, step 1 of 1, I want the drum here, I want that, or you do it live. And so it loses some of the magic, I think, of the simplicity of the PO33. So that was a lot of fun. And then just my hope is to get in here a little bit more so I can work more on the SP and Digitech, because I'm still learning the Digitech and I've had no time this week to learn it. I didn't even get to play it. I was like, man. But I really want to do a beat set for the end of December featuring like my top 5 songs from my top 5 like beats and songs that I made this year. So that's my plan. Over on the Audionautics front, we've got a lot going on. We're scheduling out our label releases for next year. So if you're interested, we're basically booked through, I think, July or August. But if you're interested in having a release through us, just email us or DM us on Discord and we'll schedule a meet. If you've got some music that you've got demos of or something, let us know. But yeah, we're getting ready for a pretty packed year. We're doing some interesting merch things and stuff like that. So you can look forward to that. But yeah, I think that's about it. Oh yeah, the one thing I did want to mention is we were talking with all the patrons about our playlist. So we have an Audionautic radio playlist on Spotify, and it's over 500 listeners. It gets a good listener base, but I mean, I don't know if you can tell, but I've been pretty burned out and not wanting to use Spotify as an artist in general. And so we've been discussing with the patrons and Curtis and I ourselves where to migrate to and whether we should migrate. And it kind of seemed like the patrons and I landed on doing Tidal, and we'll make 2 playlists, one that's ambient and one that's more beat driven. So that's what we're thinking. But I'd love to hear from everybody in the chat, in the comments, over on the Discord and the Patreon, all that. What do you think? I know ASF Stripe, you were talking about YouTube music, and that's an interesting one. As you know, like YouTube's my main platform now as an artist and things like that. So that's an interesting idea.
Yeah, it's flying under the radar a little bit, you know. It looks like
I don't know if everybody realizes that it seems like not a lot of people know there's like the YouTube music streaming service. Like I don't really even know the exact thing of it. So when I say everybody, I mean, maybe I'm just speaking for me, but like, I don't think they do a very good job. Yeah. And it is different. Yeah. It's interesting.
I think I liked a couple things. I like this Pandora radio thing. I think that's interesting. You know, you just gotta keep trying.
Yeah.
You know, but no. So no, I like it. And by the way, I do want to watch those PO33s closer, because I'm just how you presented it there. I saw your Instagram and I kind of was like, ooh, you know, and it's like I'm in the middle of something else. I'm like, so right when we get done, I'm gonna go watch that. So
let me I don't mean to do self promo, but since technically this is our show, I'll put the link in the chat if anybody does want to check out the video. It's just an interesting it's just a very interesting sampler. And I think like I was saying, that I think it does lose the new one. It's awesome, but in the search for making it more like other samplers, you know, longer sample time, more banks and projects and stuff, I think it loses a little of the immediacy and magic. It also has been having a lot of manufacturer issues. The new one, the EP133, there's a lot of reports of fader issues and things like that. So the hope is they might like add a, you know, updated version or something. But yeah, here's my PO33 video. It's in the chat. No need to watch it. Just sharing it if you want to check it out. It's just really just talking about how cool this little inexpensive sampler is for creativity. We've got a lot of chat before we get going. But yeah, just chat, everybody, Discord, all that. If you have any opinion on like where to move the playlist, or where you're thinking of moving, if you're planning to leave from Spotify like Curtis did, let us know. As of now, I think we've landed on Tidal, but I am going to look into YouTube Music. We've got a lot of chat. So about the $100 bills around the breadsticks, I think that's what this one is in reference to for Spotify. Lars says that's just for extra flavor. Yeah, apparently. Ben Duches, we'll all shed a tear when the House of Cards goes down for Spotify, right? Now, my question is that there's two types of tears, right? Tears of joy or tears of sadness. So I don't know. Speaking of reverb and delay for Eon Lake and the Eon Lake special, Lars says the correct setup is reverb, delay, and then compress the shit out of it. You forgot another instance of reverb and delay. You also forgot some bit crusher and pulse stretch.
Yeah. But it works.
Those are optional, though.
Basic, starting point. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a start point, and then you expand upon it. Looks like Lars would be shedding tears of joy. He says, "I will drunkenly dance on Spotify's grave." He's got a buddy though with him. Bendu says, "I'll join you," and they're gonna drink a bottle of Old Crow. Yeah. Looks like they've got a whole event plan, so you can mark your calendar for whatever date you're theorizing it will happen, and see if Bendu and Lars are on that grave dancing around with some Old Crow.
We could fly to New York, right? Go down to Wall Street and just have a little party.
Yeah, yeah. There you go.
Spotify,
there you go. Well, I think that's about everything for this episode. Anything you want to add before we go, ASAP Stripe?
Oops, sorry, we're glitching a little bit.
Just anything you want to add before we go, ASAP Stripe?
I'll let you go.
Oh, I think he's good then. Eon Lake, anything you want to add before we okay. Before we go, Eon Lake?
I just want to say I didn't swear again. Go me.
Yeah. I had to because of Lars's comment, but you know what? That's okay.
Yeah.
Good job, Eon Lake. Good job. I just want to say a massive thanks to ASAP Stripe for stepping in to fill the role of Curtis. He even brought a cat. I mean, that is dedication.
Dedication, yeah. Thanks for that.
It's dedication. You've really filled in. You really filled in perfectly. But it's always great to see you and have you on.
I appreciate it. It's
a
privilege.
Go ahead, ASAP Stripe.
No, I was going to say it's a privilege. I really enjoy it, and I learn a lot. And so it's no worries. It's cool.
Yeah, we love having you on. And where can people find you on the interwebs?
Well, I just did right now I just did a District Kid. I put one of my introversions. So I'm pretty much everywhere right now. I'm Tidal and Apple Music and
did you uncheck Spotify?
I didn't know I could.
Yeah, you can uncheck distributor or platforms you don't want to be on.
Well, I don't even know if they could pay me I'm not on there or anything, so I don't even know how they would even do it, But no, so seriously, Bandcamp is still my most important thing. But if you stream, certainly I should show up on Apple Music and Tidal and quite a few of the other ones now. So yeah.
Definitely. And for Bandcamp, is that asapstripe.bandcamp.com?
Yeah, quick ASAP Stripe shoot. I don't have much competition yet, so I'm not going to.
They're coming for you. Yeah. Well, again, gentlemen, thanks for coming on, ASAP Stripe and Eon Lake. It has been quite a lot of fun for the first half. Then we had to get dour, but that's all right. It was good.
Good,
I highly recommend.
With me is the Arpeggiator and that Sem.
Yeah.
So,
I hope that's what sticks with you all.
Remember
us for the remember us for the Arpeggiator and Stem, but we do have to report on these things because, like I said, Spotify is, as of now, the dominant streaming platform. So we need to know what's going on. It's good to know lots of stuff is happening there. But yeah, we like to talk about the creative stuff. That's why I probably should have sandwiched it all, but put Spotify in the middle. But, I wanted the happy stuff. Let's just stick with the happy stuff. So yeah. Also, massive thanks to Bleass for sending over the Arpeggiator. It's always fun to check out their plugins. And like I said, if you want a full deep dive on the Arpeggiator or using it as an effects on another thing like the Sem, let us know in the chat, in the comments. Let us know in the Discord, social media, whatever, and we'll do it in a future video. But with that, I think we're done. We will be back next week. 11 a.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. UTC. I don't have Curtis to be like, is that right? But I'm going to just guess it's right. I think that's what I usually say, 7 p.m. UTC. What is it, 6 p.m. UK, Eon Lake, when you hop on live?
7.
Oh, 7. Then I have no idea. Maybe it's, I don't know. Whatever. No, UTC and UK, I think, are the same, aren't they? So, yeah, I think Josh is +1. Curtis is +1 UTC. So, anyways, Time changes, just don't get me started on time changes, man. Especially when we have those daylight savings and all that. Oh man, just no. No. Anyways, we'll be back next week. Thanks for watching.